loudly. Okay. All right. I don't know if Peggy's coming in. She's trying.
She's trying.
Hey, everyone. Thank you. Go ahead and familiarize yourself with the webinar features. So you can chat with us. You can also use the Q&A feature, and we'll introduce everybody in a second. I do want to I'm going to send the slide deck, because the slide deck does contain, this is my slide deck, not our guest scientist, but this is our slide deck for the STEM Expo. So we'll send that to you so you can access it in case you want those resources. Hi, Mrs. Hernandez. Well, it's 6 o'clock on the dot. And so the first thing we always like to do is introduce our staff. And then Jordan Gray, he's our guest scientist tonight, and I will introduce him after we kind of do some STEM Expo stuff. So I'm Deb McMullen. I am the coordinator for Science and Planetarium for School District U46, and I have an amazing staff, and we support about 2,000 teachers who teach science K through 12. And we also have, we support science. We're the folks that support science. So I want to introduce you to some of the staff that's on. We have Miss Peggy Hernandez. She is the planetarium teacher. So, I'm sure some of you have been to the planetarium and had a fabulous time. We just had a show. Do you want to tell everybody when your next show is?
Next program is on February 14th, Valentine's Day, and it's going to feature a program on Perseus and Andromeda, the love story in the sky, and looking at the stars, our winter sky stars.
And shows are 4:30 and 6:30, and we ask for a $2 donation, or for a family, it's $10, whichever is cheaper for you is what we do. Miss Frankie, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Frankie Valencia, and I'm a secondary science instructional coach for the district.
And then we have our newest member to our team, Miss Rodriguez.
Hi, I'm Christina Rodriguez. I'm the secretary that works alongside these wonderful people.
Yeah, she's the glue, keeps us together. Okay, so before I introduce Jordan to all of you, I'm gonna play a slide deck here, go through a little bit of a slide deck. The purpose of kicking this off is just to give you guys some background information. Some of you have been to every single one of our kickoffs, and so this is a repeat of all of that information. But basically, welcome to our third and final STEM kickoff. The expo is going to be April 23rd. It's going to be at Eastview Middle School. Registration is going to open in February. If you have signed up for these sessions, you will be on the list to get the links to register in February. So you don't really need to do anything further. At this point, you'll get the information on registration just because you were here with us at one or at any of the sessions. We will send those to you. So for our program today, we want to provide you a very brief overview of the STEM Expo and provide you with some ideas and resources, just very briefly, get you thinking a little bit. And then of course, the whole reason we're all here is to learn from Jordan Gray. So we'll keep it brief so that you guys can learn from Jordan, because he's wonderful. What to expect? Well, guess what? We're in person, totally in person this year. It's very exciting. We're very excited. We do have an option for you to submit your presentation via video. So if you can't be at Eastview on April 29th, or maybe you're shy and you really don't want to stand in a room full of people, it's okay for you to go ahead and videotape that and give the submission, and we will give you feedback. So you're going to register via Google Forms starting in February. It's going to be in person. There is an option to go ahead and submit something pre-recorded if you prefer. You're going to present a phenomenon-based investigation, and We'll be in person in Eastview. We're going to be giving you feedback. So whether you're in person or you submit a video, you are going to get personalized feedback from a peer, from a team of mentors. We are your science mentors. Peer review is part of the scientific process, is a very important part of the scientific process. And so we're modeling the STEM Expo after that idea. We need some volunteers. So for any of the adults in the room, if you'd like to be a peer review panel member, it's not a judged event. Rather, we're modeling that peer review process. And so we're looking for people who are willing to come talk to students, learn about their project. We do have some questions to help support you through that process if you're a little leery. We sometimes have people say, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer, and that's okay. This is about talking to students, finding out what their project is about, and finding out what excites them, what science project processes did they use, what would they do differently, what did they like doing, what might they do the next year. We also have volunteers. We need volunteers to help us run the event, like for check-in, monitoring spaces, handing out materials, that kind of thing. And then we are always looking for local phenomenon ideas, helping us spread the word of the event, supporting a student in completing a project. If you have any interest and availability to help volunteer, you can just email me. My email is there at the bottom. I want to ask my staff, did I miss anything so far? Did we get it all covered? Okay, good. All right. This slide, I'm not going to go through this. We went through it on the first expo in detail. There's a recording of that. So we could always send that to you if you missed the first one. But on here is going to be 4 different sources for you to help you with your project. So here, this first one is for if you're going to be in person, there is a template there for you. So there's some information about what we're going to be giving you. So actually, when you register, Ms. Rodriguez is going to send you a trifold board. So you're going to get a trifold board. You can sign up as by yourself. You can sign up in a team of students, your choice. The STEM Expo is open to any student who lives within our boundaries. They do not have to be a U46 student. So let's say you've got a friend that maybe goes to St. Joe's and you want to do a project with your friend at St. Joe's. You can do that. You could invite your cousin who goes to St. Edward's and to do the project as well, and they could enter it by themselves. So as long as you live within our school district U46 boundaries, you are welcome to present a project. We also have links to the instructions for the pre-recorded presentation here, if you want to do it that way. This slide deck gives you some ideas about what we're looking for. And maybe I'll ask, you always explain this way better than I do, Mrs. Hernandez, but we're wanting you to really do something, a phenomenon kind of investigation. And then we also have this template here. So do you want to explain that better than me? What do we mean by a phenomenon investigation or an inquiry project?
I think the easiest way to think of it is something that catches your attention in the natural world that makes you just say, what's up with that? Something interesting, something weird, something that you didn't think would happen. Any of those things are considered a phenomenon. And you need to then, to do the inquiry, you just start asking questions about it. Is it because of this? How does that part work? What happens with this? And how does that work? And so you're doing some investigating, you're doing some researching, you're doing some thinking, you're doing some questioning, and all of that is part of your project. So it's not necessarily an old-fashioned science fair project that the adults might remember, where you sit down with a piece of paper and you write, number 1, get a piece of paper. Number 2, write down the materials. It's a little bit more free-flowing than that. And there's no requirement to do some kind of experiment. I mean, carefully observing the sky is always my example, and documenting it and finding some patterns or connections to different observations is totally and completely an excellent STEM Expo project.
Yes, you always explain it way better than I do. All right, so hang on to this resource. If you guys lose this resource, or if you guys want input. So if we've already had a couple students email and ask us about what we thought of their idea. So we're a resource for you too. Just feel free to email us and we can help you with projects. We're so excited and we can't wait for the STEM Expo to get here. All right, so I want to introduce you guys to Jordan Gray of an organization called the Turtle Survival Alliance. He is a wildlife biologist, and I just want to give him a little bit of a shout out. Jordan, I can't remember, when did you start doing the teaching? So Jordan is one of our regular presenters at another event we organize called the National Biodiversity Teach-In. Has this been
2019?
Wow. Okay. So for a long time, and
Yeah.
actually we've partnered with Jordan and his organization in different ways, but Jordan's even helped us with teacher workshops. We did a phenomenon-based workshop for our teachers called Alligator Ice. He does all of our different things. And actually he just got, did you end up working with Earth Echo?
I did. Yeah. Great.
So Earth Echo, which is Philippe Cousteau's organization, saw his presentation on the National Biodiversity Teach-In and said, can you put us in contact? Asked if I could put in contact. And so I'm so excited you got to do that. That's a huge step up.
Yeah, that was great. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. I'm going to stop sharing so you can start sharing.
Okay.
And then I'm going to turn off my camera. And so then, hey guys, so I forgot to ask you this, Mr. Jordan. Do you want them to hold questions? Do you want us to enter questions? How would you like questions to happen?
I think it would probably be best if questions are put in the chat and Q&A, and then you can read them to me at the end if you'd like.
Okay, perfect. That works. All right. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot.
No problem.
All right. I'll get this queued up here. Okay, we good to go?
The floor is yours.
All right. Well, welcome everybody, and I'm very excited to be here this evening. I've had a wonderful relationship with the U46 district and Debbie McMullen of Elgin High School, and it's been really just wonderful to be able to interact with the students of the district and be able to think about conservation and think about different initiatives that people can become a part of. And I think that's a big part of the upcoming STEM challenge, is being able to create your own vision, be able to put together what it would take to be able to implement that. And in turtle conservation, that's huge. So today we're going to be talking about rewilding turtles to the natural landscape. And this really encompasses so many aspects of science and the scientific model, as well as community engagement and outreach and awareness. And it takes those two worlds and binds them together, because for these initiatives to have success, especially long-term success, it is paramount that the community not only understands what we're doing, understands the science behind what we're doing, but also really, takes this project as their own. And so it's something that they want to continue into the future with our assistance. So let me tell you first about Turtle Survival Alliance. We're often called TSA, though we are not that TSA at the airport. So we won't worry about checking for water bottles and things like that. However, we actually are the first TSA. So TSA was formed in 2001, in January of 2001, and as a task force of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. We are now our own standalone nonprofit, having achieved that success in 2005. So we are committed to zero turtle extinctions in the 21st century and beyond. And we're really made up of a diverse assemblage of organizations, institutions, and individuals with a passion for saving turtles, like me. I love turtles. Every day, all day, it is turtles for me. So together with our partners, TSA is the largest and most comprehensive tortoise and freshwater turtle conservation organization on Earth. And strategic partnerships are our core strength. Plus, of course, like you see in this photo, a lot of really extraordinary people who dedicate their lives to turtle conservation. And we work all over the world. We are based in Charleston, South Carolina, but have programs and projects, partnerships all over the world, as you can see by this map, many of them being in Southeast Asia, where there is a great amount of turtle diversity. But something that people may not know, and you may not know at home watching, is that the United States of America is the most turtle rich or most diverse country in the world in terms of different types of turtles and tortoises. We currently have 89 species and subspecies of turtle and tortoise that inhabits the United States. So for those of you watching from the U46 district, you are part of this great assemblage of turtles and tortoises. And as you can see from these bullets, the Turtle Survival Alliance engages so many different aspects, not only of science, but also community relations. And again, all of that is to be able to have long-term success for the conservation of turtles and tortoises, not only in their native habitats, but where needed in captivity. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. So if you look at this, you can see how TSA directly impacts 20 of the top 25 most endangered turtles on Earth. And we positively impact 1/3 of all species of turtle and tortoise. So over 100 species falls underneath TSA's positive footprint, positive conservation impact around the world. Now I know these little blurbs about the turtles are quite small, so we won't focus on them for right now. But I do want to focus on this three-pronged conservation action approach. And when you're developing your scientific model based on a program that you would think you would like to initiate, think about our three-pronged conservation action approach. So first in that prong, first and foremost, should I say, is restoring populations in the wild. So conservation is being able to conserve animals and their habitats in the wild in the natural setting. Whereas in preservation is preserving that, but that preservation might take place in different forms. It may be preserving habitat, it may be preserving the species in the wild, but it could also be seen as preserving that animal, such as oftentimes and sadly seen now in zoos or aquariums, where highly endangered animals' only hope for survival is in captivity. And that's a type of preservation. We also secure species in captivity, like I was just saying, through assurance colonies. An assurance colony is basically like an ark. It is a genetic reservoir of some of these most endangered animals, so that at some point when the conditions are right, we'll say, that animal can be returned to the landscape, and we have enough genetics to be able to return healthy animals and healthy populations to the wild. And so with all that, we build the capacity to restore, secure, and conserve species within their range country. And that last part of it, within their range country, is extremely important. We want to be able to build these programs where the animals naturally live, where the people who will be stewards of this animal once they're returned to the landscape naturally live and live amongst the animals. So less so having animals, say, in captivity in the United States where we're headquartered, and more so building out that capacity within the animal's natural range. So look at this beautiful image. This is a northern river terrapin, Batagur basca, in its native habitat of the Sundarbans. And the Sundarbans is an immense mosaic of tidal rivers and mangrove swamps or mangrove forests. But you'll notice there's something unique on this turtle's back, and that is a satellite transmitter, as well as writing in Hindi that gives who the turtle is, the organization, Turtle Survival Alliance, that works with it, as well as a number to call should somebody find that turtle. So this is something that we're going to be talking about today, rewilding. So what is rewilding? Well, in simple terms, rewilding are conservation efforts aimed at restoring and protecting natural processes and wilderness areas. And that includes the animals within them. And TSA returns turtles to the natural landscape all across the world. This is foundational to our success and foundational to preserving these amazing species of turtle and tortoise. By the way, if you're thinking, how many are there out there across the world? There are 353 living species of turtle and tortoise, and many, many more subspecies. So different variants or races of that species of turtle. So let's look at how a few examples of how the TSA have returned turtles to the natural landscape. Well, down in Belize in Central America, we are returning to the landscape Central American river turtles, one of the most ancient lineages of turtle. In fact, this animal is so evolved for its aquatic lifestyle and ecosystem that they can virtually spend all of their time underwater through adaptations and evolution. Below Belize in Colombia, we are currently working on a restoration project for this cute little guy, the Dall's toad-headed turtle. And right now we are translocating, which means moving an animal from one place to another, turtles that are genetically important, but unfortunately live in fragmented habitats. And we are translocating them to a reserve that we have established in Colombia so that we can preserve this species, which is endemic or only occurring in Colombia. Then also the radiated tortoise. This is an animal that is unfortunately poached in the thousands, if not tens of thousands. We believe that possibly up to 50,000 radiated tortoises are poached from Madagascar each year for both the pet and food trades. And TSA currently cares for around 26,000 radiated tortoises that have been rescued from poachers and smugglers. And now we are in the process of returning those animals back to the wild. Also in India and Bangladesh, we are working to restore this cute little turtle, the black softshell turtle, to the Brahmaputra floodplain and other rivers and their floodplains in Northeast India and Bangladesh, a species that only 15 years ago was considered extinct in the wild. Over in Bangladesh, Myanmar, and India, we are working on a tri-national program to rewild Asian giant tortoises to the landscape. This is one of the largest tortoises in the world, next to your archipelago tortoises like Galapagos and Albudabra tortoises. Unfortunately, however, it has been hunted throughout its range primarily for food. But we just released animals back to their native forest in Bangladesh last year, and then we are planning on releasing a new batch to the hills of India this year. And we will continue to work on that every year, hopefully, to restore populations of this amazing tortoise. And then also look at that guy. That is the silver terrapin. Most people animal like it's absolutely incredible, but extremely endangered. In their native Cambodia where we work, there's likely only about 10 individuals left in the wild. If you think about that, okay, we most of us know sea turtles and we understand how endangered sea turtles are, and there's all these projects to help sea turtles. Well, the rarest sea turtle, the Kemp's Ridley sea turtle, has about 9 to 10,000 nesting females left in its greater population. So for this animal, we're talking about 10 wild, naturally wild turtles left. And that's why our rewilding efforts in Cambodia are so important to being able to restore the species on the landscape. And then finally in Myanmar, restoring the Burmese star tortoise. And I think by far this has been our most successful conservation effort, in which we have now released thousands of tortoises back to the landscape. This beautiful tortoise was, as of only less than 20 years ago, considered functionally or ecologically extinct on the landscape. But now there's thousands of them back in natural wildlife sanctuaries, and they're not just back, but they are naturally reproducing again. So this is an incredible story and one that we're very proud of. But I want to talk to you today about introducing the northern river terrapin. If you look at this photo, it is just an absolutely incredible animal. That is a male in breeding coloration. Now I said breeding coloration, and for turtles and tortoises, you might not really think, wait a minute, breeding coloration, isn't that like with birds and some other animals? But in some species of turtle and tortoise, they can also exhibit breeding colorations. In the breeding season, the males like this will exhibit this jet black head and then this kind of salmony pink skin or reddish skin. And during the non-breeding season, those colors fade considerably. And that is what we call sexual dichromatism. So where the one member of a sex will express these colors during the breeding season for various reasons. So the northern river terrapin is one of the largest hard-shelled turtles in South Asia. And like I was just saying, males and females are sexually dimorphic. That is a male you see up top, which contrasts greatly with the more drab female you see below. But still, both of them are quite large turtles. And females historically nest on sea-facing beaches and river sandbars, although they are not sea turtles. They're actually estuarine turtles, which live in brackish water. So anything from fresh to full salinity, these animals can live in. And these females can lay about 30 eggs per clutch. So they are an animal of this incredible ecosystem called the mangrove forest or the mangrove swamps. And one of the most known animals from the mangrove swamps of South Asia is this beauty, and that is the Bengal tiger. In this area of the Sundarbans, they are famed as the man-eating tigers. And sadly, many families per year of people who fish or hunt in the Sundarbans come to know that term closely. There are deaths from this tiger, but again, this is not an animal to be maligned. This is an animal who deserves respect. And when people encroach into their native habitats, these animals may act out, especially if a female is guarding cubs. But either way, just like the northern river terrapin, we want to see beautiful animals like these Bengal tigers continue to live in the Sundarbans and elsewhere in India. So they are now a ghost of the mangroves. They were formerly abundant in the range map you can see there denoted by orange. But unfortunately, eggs and adults for centuries, and especially in the last several decades, were hunted to excess. We only believe that across their whole entire range, only 20 now survive in the wild. And in fact, it was back in 2008, before many of you might have even been born, that the last wild known nesting occurred on this little island on the Bay of Bengal called Machua. Now they are ranked critically endangered, if not on the brink of functional extinction. So now, if you look at that range, it is just a tiny, tiny little green dot on that map, and that is called the Sundarbans. Recently, however, there have been sightings of just a few individuals and even little juveniles. So that means somewhere across this broad range, there are females, if at least one, reproducing successfully. But the fact of the matter is that immediate action was necessary to stave off this species from extinction. And that is where the first part of science comes in, and that is ground truthing. That is looking for this animal across its native landscape. And in doing that, our TSA India program, along with our partners at the West Bengal Forest Department and Sundarbans Tiger Reserve, just fortuitously happened upon 12 animals that were living in a pond at an interpretation center in Sundarbans Tiger Reserve at Sajnakelly. And so what we did, working together as in a partnership, was create a breeding program for these animals, not only to save the animal from extinction, but hopefully be able to release offspring or young from those original founder animals back to the wild. So readying turtles for release. So this program has been successful. Since that first year in 2008, we have hatched over 400 northern river terrapins. So imagine the boon to their population, having 20 perceived to exist in the wild, compared with 400 that have now been produced from just 12 animals. And those animals are raised at different facilities in their native Sundarbans, and then are now being prepared for release. And when we prepare them for release, we move them to these big ponds we've created at these forest stations. And those are called soft release habitats. And a soft release is a contrast with a hard release, in that a hard release is where you just take an animal and you release it into the wild. Unfortunately, hard releases oftentimes come with dire consequences, whether it be the animal not knowing where it is, whether not being prepared for life in the wild, whether it being not ready for the gauntlet of predators and human-induced threats on their landscape. And so we build these soft release pens, which is TSA's standard for returning or rewilding animals to the natural landscape. And for the northern river terrapins, the soft release pens include natural tidal influence, channels of various depth, visual impairments, and of course, mangroves, much like the habitat they will soon live in. So, preparation for release. This past year, we chose 10 subadults. So animals that are nearing maturity, are almost at the same size as an adult, from that greater population of 400 that we've produced, and move them to a forest station to go into the soft release pen. And another part of science. So preparing them for release, what do we need to do? We need to give them thorough health examinations. We need to give them disease screening. And like I said, we need to be able to prepare their bodies and their physiology and even their minds for this life in the wild. Also, we want to know where do they go after they're released. This is extremely important part of the scientific method, because we need to understand from the turtles themselves what they're doing after the release. How far are they moving? Where do they prefer to live? Is this even the right size to release an animal? Are they being captured by fishermen afterwards? All of these things are really important, so that it can guide us for future releases. So this year's release really served as a pilot release. A pilot release is basically a test. Does this work? Will our method work? If it doesn't work, what can we do to better manage the subsequent releases? How can we hone in our efforts? So to do that, we cleaned the turtle shells and affixed these satellite transmitters. And satellite transmitters are awesome. Just think about a cell phone, and you look on your maps where you are, where you're going. Well, the satellite transmitter on the turtle does the same thing for us after release. So we can actually get feedback every time that turtle surfaces to the water, and it pings to the satellite and gives us a data point. And from that, we are able to see all of the places that the turtles go and how they're utilizing their habitat, and if they are captured following their release by people who are fishing the Sundarbans. So they were affixed with these satellite transmitters as well as VHF, very high frequency transmitters. They're affixed with epoxy and a fiberglass mesh. And the important thing to remember in looking at this is, even though it may seem large and cumbersome, these animals are very good swimmers. They live in these tidally influenced rivers and creeks, and so it doesn't pose much threat to the animal at all. This type of transmitter is not something that will easily get lodged or caught on something. And the information that we gain from the transmitter outweighs those potential impacts. The other thing that is added to the transmitter is a contact, like I was saying before. Who does that turtle belong to? Okay, so that's the Turtle Survival Alliance and the West Bengal Forest Department and Sundarbans Tiger Reserve, as well as a phone number. So if that turtle happens to be incidentally captured in a fishing net, who can they call so that that turtle can be returned to the wild? So let's look at where the turtles went that we released in January of this year. So first off, this is a very, very large place that we are releasing turtles into. I know it's hard to gauge how big 10,000 square kilometers is, but if you can imagine the island nation of Jamaica, down below Florida in the Caribbean, that entire nation is the size of this habitat that turtles are being released into. So huge, right? Especially for an animal that is about this big. That is a vast, vast ecosystem to be released in. So previous releases by our partners in Bangladesh showed that these animals do indeed move large distances after they're released. And so the satellite transmitters will show that. And the VHF transmitters allow our biologists to follow the turtles by boat and confirm what the GPS is telling us. So before we release the turtles, another aspect comes into play, and that is community engagement. And one of the ways that we engage the community in this area is through bringing in a cultural and religious tie. So in the culture of the Sundarbans, the Buddhist monks believe in excuse me, sorry, I just got caught up there. The forest goddess of the Sundarbans, her name is Bambibi. And if this animal is blessed by a priest at the temple of Bambibi, as you see here, it gives kind of a cultural protection, a religious protection to that turtle, so that the people in the Sundarbans understand that this is a part of our heritage. This animal is a part of our culture, and to be able to fully appreciate this animal, we need to be able to let it live its life in the Sundarbans. And we do this type of blessings of turtles in other places. We do them, we release or back to. So like it says here, the goal is to create a cultural connection for the return of the terrapin to the mangrove forest ecology. And just look at these beautiful pictures, and you can see the looks on the faces and just being able to appreciate this turtle and appreciate now the blessing of the forest goddess of the Sundarbans, Banbibi. And again, here's another beautiful shot and bringing in community members from the release site to be able to experience and engage with this turtle. So the great release. So terrapins were released into the heart of the Sundarbans on January 19th. This release represented the first monitored rewilding of northern river terrapins and the first satellite tagging of any non-marine or freshwater terrestrial animal in India. And the data acquired from this release will again help guide our conservation and repatriation measures for future rewilding efforts. And there's a beautiful shot of a couple of the terrapins heading down to the Sundarbans across the mudflats. And look at that. That is Kali. Kali is probably our favorite of these terrapins. She's a very outgoing female. She's the largest of the females. And how beautiful is it to see that animal with its natural habitat behind it? And I can speak from experience. There is nothing better than seeing an animal in its natural habitat. Nothing even comes close to it. And I have worked in many different capacities in conservation, including caring for animals in zoologic environments. So community engagement, like I was saying, is really big. And that person you see on the left side of your screen is Upamanyu. And Upamanyu has done an amazing job with being able to reach out to fishing communities in the Sundarbans to not only ask them about if they have seen terrapins, wild terrapins, but to engage them in these releases and future releases. Because we want to integrate local fishermen and the riverside communities. It's fundamental as far as our approach for at-risk species in India and around the world. So we distributed pictorial leaflets in the fishing communities, as well as Upamanyu and others engaged, especially female members of the communities. Sadly, there are many female community members in the Sundarbans who have lost their significant others, their husbands, their sons, their cousins, their nephews to tigers, as well as other risks out there in the fishing community. And Upamanyu really likes to bring these women in to be able to share in the joy of releasing an animal back to the wild. It is both a conservation initiative and, if you think about it, a cultural initiative. So where did the turtles go following their release? Well, we call it the Great Dispersal because they went all over. And this is extremely important to understanding the science behind their movement and for us to be able to release turtles again. So to date, the terrapins have moved over 6,000 square kilometers. That is enormous. That is more than half the size of the Sundarbans or the island nation of Jamaica. Put it bluntly, these turtles can move and they want to move. They are going out across their habitat, searching for the best place to settle down. But if you also think about it, as much effort as we put in, so animal care, all the way from the time they were incubating as eggs to years later when we're adapting them to the environment through a soft release, they still don't exactly have an understanding of the complexities and the vastness of the habitat they're being released in. And this is something that we are continuing to work on. what is really the best size to release these animals? I mean, some of the turtles, if you see here, traveled for more than 186 miles just in the first 20 days. Imagine, like, most of us might live 2 miles, 5 miles, maybe 10 miles or 20 miles from our school or our places of work. Imagine in 20 days, a turtle moving 186 miles. This is important for us to know. And that means that the turtles traveled an average of 11 miles per day. And look at that polygon. This is a distribution polygon showing where the 10 turtles went following their release. Some went way out into the Bay of Bengal and then came back into the mangrove forests. Others went far up and outside of the boundaries of the national park. Still others, and it turns out all of them, went over into neighboring Bangladesh. Now, unfortunately, this is something that we were prepared for, but we didn't exactly want to see, because then they were no longer under the safety of the Sundarbans Tiger Reserve or under the authority of the West Bengal Forest Department, the governing authority and the law enforcement. Now they, without a passport, without a work visa, they have traveled into a new country where they might not be as well protected. And if you see A19 here, it was a homebody. It relatively stayed in the same location as the release. But A15 moved all over the place and way into Bangladesh. So fascinating, fascinating information you can gain from these satellite transmitters. All right, so where are they now? And I have to play this wonderful video here of a northern river terrapin in Bangladesh coming up. So where are they now? Well, all of them, like I said, moved into Bangladesh, where we also have a program. And we were able to retrieve 2 of the animals. Sadly, 9 of the 10 individuals were caught by fishermen, because this whole area has a gauntlet of fishing nets. And these fishing nets, we know, pose a threat to the turtles. And that's why the community engagement is so important, so that if a turtle is caught in a fishing net, it can be released back into the wild. But I'm really sad to say that these turtles that we've grown for years and that we love, most of them have likely been eaten by humans. And you have to think about it, we want to see these animals thrive, okay? But this area of the Sundarbans in Bangladesh is one of the poorest areas in the entire world. So an animal like a turtle could feed that family that catches it, or the selling of that turtle at market may feed that family possibly for the rest of the year. And so these are the complex socioeconomics that we have to try to not only understand, but mitigate when it comes to returning these animals to the wild. So real problems, real world problems that require everyday solutions. So with that being said, I don't want to end that on a sad note about our terrapins, because that information is just as critical as if the animals had survived. One we know right now to be surviving. But so how can that guide us? Well, that can absolutely and tremendously guide us in future releases. We may go through years of this and then decide that releasing these animals back into the Sundarbans is not in the best interest of the turtles. And sadly, that animal may only exist in captivity for the rest of this species' time here on Earth. Now, we don't want to believe in that. We want to believe, and we do wholeheartedly, that we can get these animals back in the wild, that the communities will embrace the culture of the turtle and the culture of the turtle on its landscape. And that is something that you might be wondering, is that happening near me? So is there rewilding near me? And the simple answer, and this is awesome, is that the answer is yes. And especially in Illinois, especially in the areas bordering Chicago, the primary focus of turtle conservation and rewilding is for the Blandings turtle. This gorgeous speckled turtle with a beautiful yellow throat, and we call it the permanent smile. This animal is being rewilded through Head Start efforts back to areas of its former range, or where there already is turtles, populations are being augmented or increased through hatching eggs, raising young turtles, whether it be at schools, whether it be at zoos, whether it be in laboratories, and returning them to the wild. And a lot of these programs have been really successful. So what I want to do for you is challenge you to think, how could I create a program that returns animals to the wild, or bolsters populations of animals, or even recreates habitats or protects habitats in my area? What are all the scientific and community engagement tools that this program will require? And I want to let you all know right now, if you think of a program and you think I could be of help, I would love to help. I'm involved with the scientific method all the time in the work we're doing, and involved in community engagement and initiatives. And so this is something that I really look forward personally to seeing what you come up with. You know, it might be for a salamander in your area, or a toad, or a turtle, or bats, or birds. But how can you apply maybe some of what you've learned today about the scientific method and cultural initiatives to be able to return or restore populations or habitats in the wild? So with that, I want to say thank you very much. I'd love to hear some of the questions that you might have posed to me. And if you'd like to get in contact with me, my email address is right there, jgray@turtlesurvival.org. So with that being said, I'll close out my screen, and I look forward to answering some questions.
Sure. And I hope people send us some more questions. One of the first questions we have, oops, I lost it, sorry. We have a first grader.
Oh.
And they are looking for some ideas. They're interested in turtles, but they don't want to own one. And, you know, maybe that talking a little bit about owning turtles might be a good question if we get to that, but like a kind of project. So I asked some more questions and said, well, what are you interested in for turtles? And so the student said that they're interested in the patterns on their tummies.
Okay.
And their shells.
Okay.
And I was going to say the stuff about Blandings turtle, but I knew you would.
A program that we are going to get started.
That we are.
In fact, I see this April 29th STEM Expo as something that would be great for me to come up to. We need to figure that out.
That has to happen.
I need to get on the judging panel.
Yes, that would be so great.
Yeah, maybe we can get our.
And I know Elgin will be so great because they've been wanting you to come and help them with their turtles.
Yeah, great. So let's talk about a turtle shell. The question. So
yes.
A turtle shell.
Ideas.
What's that?
To give the students some ideas of what they could research.
Okay, so one of the things that you can look at. This is great. So you're talking about the patterns on turtle shells, for instance. So each turtle, no matter the species, has their own unique shell, just like a fingerprint, right? So if you think of other animals like zebras and birds and all that. So many turtles have, and like Blandings turtles, have these markings on the bottom of their shell. And if you look at a Blandings turtle, the bottom of their shell, it's a yellow shell with these black like ink blots, like a Rorschach test for all of you psychologists out there. And no two are alike. So what you could come up with is not only determining specific individual Blandings turtles and how to keep a database of those just based off of their bottom shell pattern, which, by the way, one could also create artificial intelligence to scan a turtle shell and it be able to actually look it up in a database and say, this is who it is. But one could also look at the wear on those patterns and come up with an idea, how can we possibly guess how old this turtle is? It's been out environment hair from when that turtle was young to when that turtle was older. Because once a turtle hits adulthood, we have very little idea how to tell how old they are. Because a 40-year-old turtle may very well look like an 80-year-old turtle. There's oftentimes decades within a turtle's longevity that we don't really understand how to age them. And that goes for most species. So that could be something interesting.
That would be really interesting. I didn't know that. I guess I thought there was like tree rings or something that you could use that.
Well, for some species, yes. So like the wood turtle, for instance, or even the box turtle, they do grow new rings, we'll call them, or annuli every year on the shell. However, though, you have to look at those as growth spurts. Now in Illinois, for instance, you have very distinct seasons. So a turtle is only going to have a growth spurt during the active season or the warm months. So that is actually a pretty good way to tell the age of a turtle. But there's a caveat to it, okay? So that typically ends around the time an animal is like a wood turtle or a box turtle is around 15 to 20 years old. After that, they stop adding growth rings and the shell then begins to smooth. So in reality, for some of those species of turtles, you can only kind of guesstimate how old they are after a certain age.
Thank you. That clears that up. Some more questions coming in. I think they meant, does every turtle you rescue end up having a name?
Oh, I love that. So they don't all have a name. They do have what we call accession numbers, so that they have a unique ID, and each turtle has what we call a passive integrated transponder, just like a chip you'd put in a cat or a dog so we can tell who that turtle is. However, I personally love to name turtles. Okay, so all the turtles in my research sites have unique names, and most of them are named after people I know. But like in India there, we find that giving an animal a name like that really helps bond people and communities to that turtle and wanting to save that turtle. I mean, think about it. If you have a turtle named after you out in the wild, I would bet you would love to know how it's doing. If it's surviving, if it's reproducing. Does Debbie the turtle now have little hatchling turtles out on the landscape? So yeah, that's a great reason to name a turtle, right?
That's really smart. This question, how long can a turtle live? And then the follow-up question from the same student is, can you own a turtle and release it in the wild?
Okay, so how long can a turtle live? So this is an age-old question, so to speak. Finding Nemo is a little bit off, all right? But there are several species of turtle and tortoise that can live to be up to 200 years old. Many of us know the box turtle, right? This is a common turtle that's a big part of people's lives in the United States. And the oldest box turtle out there is over 130 years old. It lives on a little island off the coast of Massachusetts called Martha's Vineyard, and it goes through brutal winters every year and then pleasant summers. But other turtles, like alligator snapping turtles, they can live to be up to 200. Galapagos tortoises, sea turtles, Aldabra tortoises. These are all your really long-lived animals. And then what was the other part of the question, Debbie?
The other part, hold on, I skipped through that. Now
I remember. Okay. So if you keep a turtle, number one, do all of your research before getting a turtle. These are complex creatures. They have social dynamics, if you can believe it. They have specific requirements per the species for being able to keep long term. And then also ask yourself, can I keep this turtle for 80 to 100 years? Most of us who own turtles will end up passing those turtles on to whether it's our children or our grandchildren or other people when we are no longer on this earth. And so that's a big thing to think about, because the answer simply to your question is no. It's really not good or appropriate to release a captive turtle into the wild. And one of the big things behind that is disease. Turtles have contagious diseases just like humans do. And many of these diseases are fatal to other turtles. So unknowingly, the turtle might be asymptomatic. So not, having a bubbly nose or a turtle cough or something like that. And unknowingly, you can unleash these pathogens into a population and not know that a population is dying off just due to the simple act of releasing a turtle that was sick back in the wild. So I should hope that just that reason alone is reason enough not to release a turtle back into the wild.
I just looked at the time and saw it was exactly 7, and there's a couple more questions, but there's one that is, what is your favorite turtle?
Oh, that's
maybe,
tough.
maybe we'll end on that question.
Yeah, what's my favorite turtle? Oh, between a diamondback terrapin and a North American wood turtle. I'm not going to choose between them. Don't make me do that. I love them both for their own reasons. I love all turtles. I mean, but
Can you estimate how many turtles you found?
How many I've found? The species or total turtles?
Total turtles, I think, is what they want.
Total turtles in my lifetime, I have found tens of thousands. So I spend I spend all my free time looking for turtles.
Well, that was really wonderful, and I really appreciate all the questions. There's a couple more questions coming in, so what I'll do is, well, actually, I think you got them all. I think you answered them all. Okay, good. We did
Yeah, if
well.
there's others, feel free to email me, and
we'll follow
I'll
up.
get
Okay.
back.
Well, thank you so much. That was a wonderful way to end our last STEM kickoff. You gave us lots of ideas and things to think about, and I'll get back to you about figuring out April. That would be great, because I
Heck
know
yeah.
I know Elgin High wanted you to come up too. So
Elgin and April, yeah, ready.
yeah.
Great.
It's
All
a
right, well,
beautiful
thank
time
you all
of
so
year.
much, and I hope everyone watching learned a little bit and got your gears turning of how you can make an impact in conservation or in
Yeah.
science.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.